I'm Alisa Vitti. I'm the founder of Flow Living, best-selling author of Woman Code, and creator of the My Flow app. And I come to you live every Thursday to talk about something juicy in how to live smarter and healthier in your female body. So today I wanted to talk to you about sex. Specifically, how to have better orgasms, because, you know, we're in the middle of like a national sex recession, and of the, the groups that are being most affected, women are actually the ones having the least quality sexual experiences these days. So I wanted to see if I could help out and talk to you a little bit about how to, boost your sex drive, but more importantly, your sexual response. So hi, Caroline. Let me know where you're tuning in from. And of course, all of these conversations are such a great opportunity for us to really share and connect. So I want to know from you, do you feel like you're having the quality kind of orgasms you want to be having when you want to have them? Or do you feel like it's hit or miss with your orgasms? What's the state of affairs of your sexual experience? And of course, let me know, say hi, let me know where you're tuning in from, and what you want to know about how you can boost your sexual experience today when we're talking. Hannah from Virginia would love to have better orgasms. I'm looking at your photo with your 4 beautiful children. We're going to talk. We're definitely going to talk. I love how women talk about their sex life. Ainsley, my orgasms occasionally write me from their travels far away. I'm not sure exactly what that means, but that's hilarious. So, I think, and feel comfortable and confident sharing amongst the Flow sisterhood, because we're all in this together to try to learn how to leverage our hormones and how to biohack our hormones and optimize our hormonal function so that we can live our best lives and be in the healthiest version of our bodies. So, I got it. I think that we're all struggling with different reasons why we're in a sexual slowdown. So I'd love to know what yours are so I can help you troubleshoot. So, hey, Bonnie, no complaints, but you love to learn. Good. Caroline, can you express a little bit more how to deal with it if it's difficult, if sex is difficult, meaning is it painful or is it somehow emotionally charged? Like, can you give me a little bit more color there as to what is difficult about it? And Ansley, meaning you're just not with someone, is that sort of why they are writing you love letters from far away? What's preventing you from having more orgasms? Okay, keep describing the state of affairs, because the more I know about what's going on with you, the more I can help specifically. And I think one of the things, Christine, you have pain with orgasm, okay? Meaning it's painful with penetration, or like, is the clitoris part painful, or is the penetration part painful? Okay. Yeah, let me hear more about that. Hannah, you would love to experience G-spot orgasms. Okay. Christine, you have clitoral pain. Oh, yes. Okay. All right. So we have some painful periods. We have some vaginismus, vulvodynia. And then we have some people who want to have more orgasms or different kinds of orgasms. There are like several different kinds of orgasms. There's orgasms that you can have from nipple stimulation, there's clitoral orgasm, there's G-spot orgasm, there's U-spot orgasm, and then there is cervical orgasm. So you can have all those different types of orgasms depending on, your ability to figure that out and work them in that way. But, I guess I want to start off by saying that the way that Western medicine looks at our sexual response is that, we're somehow lacking enough testosterone. And that if we had just had more of that, then we would be hot to trot, ready to go, wet, willing, and able. And, I think that, and even to the extent that they've released a very controversial version of female Viagra, which, nobody's using because it's ludicrous, right? The female sexual response is so multifaceted, and so deeply connected to our emotional status that to simply suggest that taking some sort of vasodilator like male Viagra or something that would boost our testosterone would help us, achieve better orgasms. It's just not working within the female ecosystem. So I share that with you because I want you to hopefully expand your understanding of what it takes for you personally to have pleasure, to experience pleasure. It is not just direct stimulation that's always going to do it. It's a multifaceted combination of things, from the state of affairs of your hormones, which, by the way, is one of the main reasons why women these days are not experiencing enough sexual satisfaction, quality orgasms, or desire. It's because when your hormones are off, when your period is funky, when you're going through perimenopause, when you're pregnant, when you're postpartum, when you're breastfeeding, your hormones are, in a place where you're having suboptimal hormonal levels for sexual desire and response. And appreciating that is a big help, but also knowing what to do to boost those levels to help ride out the imbalances, to get yourself to a hormonally optimal place is key. It's the sort of, like if I always say, stabilizing blood sugar is the foundation to balancing hormones. Balancing hormones is the foundation to having your sex drive be, and your sexual response be, what you want it to be. So first and foremost, just check in with yourself. Do you have a hormonal imbalance? Are you going through perimenopause? Are you breastfeeding? Are you dealing with fibroids or, severe PMS or something to that effect? Are you on medication? Like the two that are most commonly prescribed to women, because we're, women, is birth control and SSRIs, antidepressants, right? Both of which will tank, nosedive not only your sexual desire, but your sexual response to different things. So really, we have to just get honest about what our individual hormonal state of affairs is, because, if that's going on, that underneath anything else we're going to talk about today is really the issue for you, and boosting, your hormonal function is critical for you to start having the kind of sex and the orgasms that you want to have. So there's that. Then I want to say that we also need to expand our understanding of within a healthy cycle, within our healthy menstrual cycle, right, with balanced hormones, your sexual response is supposed to change week over week, right? So, for example, you have phases of the cycle where you are vaginally dry, just dry. And even if you are being stimulated and aroused, you might not produce the kind of lubrication that you need to enjoy pleasurable stimulation, right? And that's really important to know, especially for those of you who are struggling with vulvodynia, vaginismus. Knowing if you're in your dry phase or your wet phase is really key, because if you're in your dry phase, you won't have this expectation that somehow you should be there on your own with lubrication, and you'll have more of it on hand to potentially make things better, although that is a more complex situation. But for the rest of us, it also circles back into how we feel about ourselves sexually, right? So if you're in bed with yourself or with your partner and you're not getting lubricated, it's very common for people to start thinking something's wrong with them, that they're having a problem, that they're not turned on. Maybe they start thinking about what they don't like about their partner, and all of a sudden you're up here and you're not down there. And that's a recipe for sexual disaster, right? So you're up here, you're starting to think too much, you forgot about what's going on down there, and it's such a silly problem. It's such a solvable, unnecessary problem, because if you knew that you were simply in your dry phase, you wouldn't judge it as some sort of sign that something else was wrong. You would simply say, yeah, fact, I'm in my dry phase, I'm going to use lubricant, and then things are going to be fun from there, right? So really knowing that and appreciating that you have different sexual energy each week, that you have sexual preferences that shift each week of the cycle, and being able to articulate that with your partner or even just yourself is so important. So we have to become, so like step one to, having better orgasms is getting your hormones balanced. Step two is becoming sexually literate about yourself, right? So that you know what's going on when, and you can then help other people that are playing with you, if you're engaging or if you're with yourself, how to work with your body optimally. That's so key. I can never say that enough, because most women just literally do not know that there are wet and dry phases. There are, and of course the phases where you're more naturally lubricated are the phases where testosterone is present, as well as elevated estrogen. So it's that combination of the estrogen surging in ovulation and in the first half of the luteal phase that drives desire and auto lubrication. During the dry phases, when you're bleeding, and in the follicular phase, you have less estrogen in those phases, no testosterone, and less interest in sex naturally, right? Because, of course, the cycle is all bound up in the whole reproductive impetus. And so, of course, you're going to be more interested in sex and have more pleasurable experience around sex during, the phase where you're fertile, right? It's just nature is being efficient here. Now, of course, some women feel a lot of interest in sex as they are leading up to their bleed, because the uterus increases in size from like the size of a fist to maybe double, if you will, the size, because the endometrium has grown. And that pressure internally, just that extra little bit of weight on the nerve endings in the pelvic floor, can be pleasurable and make you interested in sex, because you have this like extra weight on all those nerve endings and you might be in the mood. So that's a way that desire is driven in the menstrual phase. So it isn't hormonal, it's structural, which I think is so cool. And if you are going to have sex while you're bleeding, which is totally great to do, you have to use lubricant. Even though you're thinking, well, wait, but there's menstrual blood. It is not lubrication. It's going to be dry and sticky the more air that hits it, so it's not going to be pleasurable without lube. So certainly lube, in that phase. So I think that that's an important step too, is really understanding where you're at. Now, let's talk about these different kinds of orgasms that you have, and maybe some troubleshooting some of these challenges that some of you are talking about. Ansley's talking about, and I can't see the rest of your comment, Ansley, you have amenorrhea. Okay, and so therefore not knowing which phase you're in. So yeah, it's for you, I would say, until you get your hormones sorted out, you're going to have to use lubricant all the time, and you're going to have to just go slow with yourself and figure out how much, what kind of stimulation is going to work for you. And this like leads into what I wanted to talk about next, which is that, the sexual response, for you to get to a place where you can go through the stages of arousal to achieve orgasmic plateau and climax, takes time. And I actually think of it now, especially now that I'm a mom, for me it takes like 3 things now. One, I need to, and whether you're a mother or not, I think for me, it's just motherhood added a level of busyness that I hadn't experienced before, even though I was very busy. It's just like another layer of it that was a lot. So for me, I needed to, first step for me, when I want to engage, whether it's with myself or with my husband, is I need to kind of draw the line in the sand energetically. That I'm like leaving the world of my thoughts and my to-do list to the side. And I am now entering like my sexual zone, okay? So for me right now, that actually means putting on some lingerie, which I never needed to do before and always thought that was so silly. But now it's like, okay, I'm putting on, and my husband's always like, why even bother? I'm just going to take it off. I'm like, it's not for you. It's for me. If I put it on, then I'm like, I'm not in entrepreneur, mom, like, half the house isn't clean. Like I'm in my bubble, right? So that is the first step for me. And I think for all of us, whatever busyness you have, creating some distinction that you're entering a special zone for the next amount of time is really important, because like I said before, one of the reasons why female Viagra has not really taken off is because it does not factor in this huge mind-body connection that women have when it comes to their sexual response. So if you want to have better orgasms, you need to prime the mind-body connection. Find some way to do that. Maybe it's not lingerie for you. Like I said, it never was for me until recently. Maybe it's music. Maybe it's a certain set of music that you put together. Maybe it's lighting a candle and shutting off all the other lights. It doesn't have to be this big production. Trust me, the less is more in this situation. But something that just marks the transition from your normal life to, okay, now I'm gonna focus my energy, my mind-body connection on my pleasure. Very, very important. Second step in the process is, of course, really using the body to relax and flush cortisol. So oftentimes I'll ask my partner for just a quick, not like this long involved back rub, but I'll just have him work my back a little bit. No, we don't have to use body oil or anything, just kind of like, for me to like lay down and just have somebody really wash some of the stress that's still being held in my tissues, because I am fully appreciative of just how adrenaline and cortisol lives in our tissues. So doing some gentle massage, asking for that as the first step in the process really helps. Huge help. Maybe it's rubbing your feet, maybe it's rubbing your head, try asking for a little bit of massage, something that's going to ground you, right? So step 1 is anchoring the mind to the body. The second one is having the body relax. And then the third step when I'm engaging with my husband is, letting him know which phase I'm in. And then, asking for what it is that I need. And or if I'm with myself, taking the time, whether it's my husband or myself, taking the time to really get myself through the arousal process. So we just can't rush it because it's not fun. If we rush it, what's the value in that, right? Then I'm not going to get where I want to be. I'm not going to have the kind of orgasm I want. There are painful repercussions. There's nothing. I'm so not motivated to do anything unless I'm going to get mine. And I think that that's a mindset shift that you need to make, right? So how can you really stand for yourself to get yours? And the biggest factor with that is time and focus on your arousal process. So I mentioned before that there are 5 different kinds of orgasms, but there's also so many different kinds of touch that you can be using, on the body to help the body, get into the arousal process. Anytime you touch, like even your arm, right? Your clitoris and labia are going to experience, more vasodilation, more blood flow to the area, which is going to make them more sensitive and primed to receive pleasure when eventually you do get there. So really spending some time just, loving up on the rest of your body before you approach the very delicate clitoris is so important. And then when you get to the clitoris, take your time and articulate, I think if you're in a same-sex relationship, I feel like it should be potentially easier for your partner to know to be more gentle. But in heterosexual relationships, men tend to be too aggressive with the clitoris. They because they're pretty aggressive with their own parts. So, you want to help them understand that like less pressure, less intensity of stimulation is better for you. To be more gentle is actually going to get you a better response. And you actually want to try this yourself. And a lot of us forget this because we're so married to vibrators and other devices. But actually, when you put too much stimulation too fast, too soon on the clitoris, you short circuit the nerve endings, the 8,000 nerve endings that you have down there, and you kind of like blow the fuse and you stop the party, right? So you don't get to climax. You kind of just get to this in between place. And that's not good for you. You're going to be frustrated. You're going to start to get irritated, resentful, mad. I mean, this is definitely going to start raising adrenaline, and you can't do that. And I think it's important to acknowledge that it's okay for you to be upset if something goes wrong in the process, because this is important for you to have your pleasure. So the person who has to advocate for this is you. And since your clitoris can't talk, your mouth has to talk. And that's something that I think a lot of us struggle with. But the best way to do it, and I'll share this story because it was one of those, I don't know, like bell ringing moments for me. So I remember I was in high school with one of my best friends who was in a long-term relationship, and she had just gone on the pill because she and her boyfriend, who had been together for 2 years, I mean, that's high school, right? They were like ready to have sex, and I was so excited for her. I like waited for her at her home, at her mom's house. Like I knew she was going to come back after. So anyway, I was like waiting, ready to celebrate the loss of her virginity. It's me, right? I'm always doing something pro-female. Anyway, so I said, "Oh my God, honey, how was it?" By this time I had discovered self-pleasuring, so I was fully having my own pleasurable orgasms, and I was like, oh, wow, I bet with sex it's going to be even more explosive and exciting. So I was really expecting, her to come back with this like extraordinary detailed story of like how this has changed her life. And so she was like, oh, it was okay. And I was like, what? Stop. Hold on, what's going on? What do you mean it was okay? You just had sex for the first time, this is supposed to be great. She's like, yeah, it was fine. I was like, did you have an orgasm? She's like, no, I don't know. I was like, what do you mean you don't know? She's like, well, I'm not really sure. And I was like, well, did you tell him what to do? She's like, I don't know what to do. I was like, have you ever done it yourself? She's like, no, that's dirty. And I literally just reflexively opened my mouth and said, well, just take a shower. I didn't understand. Even though I was raised and I went to Catholic school and nobody talked to me about sex, I just maybe because of that, my innocence was so preserved. I really couldn't understand why she would think that sex or self-pleasuring or having an orgasm was like a dirty, bad thing. And I think it's really important because you may have some sort of, old story that you can't articulate for yourself when you're in bed with someone, that holds you back from getting your needs met. And so I share this story because, it's funny, but also it's so universally true that I think so many of us believe that, we should just kind of take what we can get, and that we should focus on, our partner's pleasure. And even the fact that so many of us use vibrators when we're doing self-pleasure is indicative of this sort of passive relationship we have with our body, that somehow we just want it to happen without getting too involved. But the best way to really learn your orgasmic process, the stages of arousal, how long you can stay in orgasmic plateau, which, by the way, is like, you could stay in orgasmic plateau, which is the phase before climax. You could stay in that for like a half an hour or longer, an hour, if you knew what you were doing, right? And all that's required, of course, if climax is at a 10, you'd want to stay between a 6 and an 8 with your stimulation factor, so that you are in orgasmic plateau for as long as you want. The health benefits are, incomparable. The nitric oxide you're going to be producing, the oxytocin you're going to be producing, it is hormonal balancing to the max. It is amazing. So when I say you want to take time for this process, I am talking about a major, massive paradigm shift in what kind of time you think it could take. If you think it should take you 5 minutes to climax, think again. It should take you maybe 20 minutes to get to orgasmic plateau, right? Where you're working, relaxing the body, and arousing without direct stimulation, the vulva area. And then when you actually start to approach the clitoris, then give it as much time as you can, staying between a 6 and an 8 before you achieve climax. It's an incredible shift in the process. And by the way, this works if you're with a female partner. This will definitely work on her. If you're with a male partner, this will definitely work on him too. Slowing the process down for them is also beneficial. And for someone who mentioned her husband or partner finishes so fast because sex is infrequent, you can actually, by appreciating and understanding slowing down your own sexual response, you can actually help your partner learn how to have more extended sexual response as well. Men can stay in orgasmic plateau for as long as they need to, as long as they learn how to do it. So they need to learn how to stay between a 6 and an 8 as well before they climax, and which for them is marked by ejaculation, right? So it's really, really an interesting part of the process. So I think appreciating sort of the biology of how this works, the biochemistry of how this works, it just gives you so much power, right? Now, I'm going to answer some questions in a second, but I didn't want to leave out the different types of orgasms that you can have. I mentioned you can have orgasms by nipple stimulation. You can have the clitoral orgasm, which is by far the best kind of orgasm that a woman can have. And remember, nature is a bell curve, right? And so the vast majority of women actually climax primarily via clitoral stimulation only. There's a small percentage of women who do climax through stimulation via penetration, but that is on the one end of the bell curve. And then there are some people, just because this is the way nature works, that just really struggle with achieving climax. So, but what is normal is to not actually have any pleasurable response from penetration, which is important, which is why it's so important before you even think about penetration to really maximize the clitoral orgasmic experience. And if you're a male, and I see that there are a few watching, if you're working to increase your partner's pleasure, then you want to really spend much more time doing that before you introduce your body part into the situation, because everybody's going to be happier with that experience. And for those of you who are experiencing painful intercourse with opposite sex partnerships, then you want to think about reimagining sex, right? It can be done in so many different ways. It doesn't always have to be penetrative. There can be other ways that you go about it. You don't always have to have that kind of traditional sex to have a great sexual life with your partner. There's oral sex, there's other things that you can do. You want to find something that works for you, and by maybe taking that off the table for a little bit of time and focusing more on your clitoral pleasure and really nailing that with yourself and your partner, things might shift in the body as well, because the clitoral orgasmic plateau is so healing for the endocrine system and so healing for the body on so many levels. Hannah's asking, why are clitoral orgasms the best? Because they provide, well, first of all, there's no other part of the whole vulvo-vaginal area that has this many nerve endings. And so it provides the most benefit from an endocrine point of view, from a nervous system point of view, from an immune system point of view, but also because you have concentrated 8,000 nerve endings, you're going to actually have the most orgasmic potential realized at the clitoris versus anywhere else. But there is the G-spot, and the G-spot is technically where the 8,000 nerve endings anchor into the vaginal canal, and then there's the U-spot, and the A spot, and the U spot is where the urethra is stimulated, where it's sort of near the vaginal canal, and the A spot is sort of near where the anus is stimulated, interior of the vaginal canal. And then there's cervical orgasm, which can be very complicated for you, but depending on which part of the phase cycle you're in, the cervix actually moves. So depends on which phase, but it can either be higher up in the vaginal canal and firmer, or it can be lower and softer. So knowing which of those you can tolerate and which one is pleasurable is valuable, and that is definitely another place where orgasm can be achieved as well. So that's what's possible in your body. And of course, women's refractory period, the time in which you can recover from a climactic moment, is shorter than for that in men. So some men, like nature is a bell curve, some men have a very short refractory period, but that's a very small percentage. That's on one side of the bell curve. Some men on the other side of the bell curve have like the longest refractory period ever, and they need like a week to recover. Most men in the larger part of the bell curve have, kind of a more normal refractory period, meaning like, they can have one orgasm and they kind of need like a couple of hours to recover, right? That's pretty typical. So that's also important to know. But you as a female have a very short refractory period, maybe 15 minutes. Or less. Some of you were saying that you're multiply orgasmic. And some of you in the bell curve conversation will have even shorter than 15-minute refractory periods. And some, because of the bell curve process, will have a very long refractory period, but that's more rare. Most women have, 15, 20 minutes, and then they can go again with clitoral stimulation. So Jenna is asking a really great question. What role would adrenal fatigue play in the level of orgasms felt? A huge role, because now we're talking about the fact that the body has exceeded its production of adrenaline and cortisol. You're being robbed of progesterone because it's molecularly similar to cortisol, and now you're not in a hormonally balanced place. So like I said in the beginning, if you have any kind of hormonal imbalance, it's going to affect your sexual interest and the physical response. So if that's going on and you're tired, you want to just slow down even more. See how you can focus in on the relaxation part, like I talked about. So for example, I would, we're in the young child parenting years, right? My husband and I, which is an exhausting time. We're both always like more tired than we wish we were, right? It's pretty typical for those of you who have children. I'm sure you can relate. Although Hannah, who has 4 children, you should write a book. We just have the one, and we're like exhausted. So one of the things it's in a way, Jenna, like having some extra strain on our adrenals. So I think that one of the things that's really helpful for us, and I would love for you to try, is really yes, it is rewarding but exhausting. So is really trying to help each other relax a little bit before anything gets started, right? So for us, it's just trading back rubs, because that's really like a nice way to kind of get in our bodies and relax and have a little bit of that cortisol flush that's so critical for the nervous system to recalibrate itself. And just working with the body is the best way to help with adrenal issues, I always say. So there's that. Now, the other thing I wanted to talk about today too is, some things that can help you with some of the hormonal problems that you had, because, I don't want to dangle this carrot of all the different orgasms that you can have and all of this other stuff without giving you some structural support to deal with the likely hormonal issues that you're having. And stress, by the way, if you don't have a period problem but you have stress, that's a hormonal, cause of imbalance. So I wanted to give you sort of some things that I think are really helpful to boost your endocrine function when it comes to sex. And the first one is rhodiola. I think that if you're dealing with fatigue, moodiness, some depression, some PMS, just like kind of like low-grade minor versions of that, rhodiola helps the adrenal glands really adapt to stress better. And that's really fantastic. It's a very safe herb. You can take it multiple times a day. I always think Gaia Herbals is just the best when it comes to herbal formulations that are standardized and tested. So that's something that I would really recommend and it works in as little as 30 minutes. So let's say, you had a stressful day and you and your partner, or you and yourself, made a decision that you were going to try to get sexually active later that day. Pop some rhodiola a half an hour to an hour before you get to your date, and it really will help you relax physiologically, which is a good thing. Another supplement that's really great is zinc. If you're experiencing symptoms of estrogen dominance, where you're struggling with your weight, you've got more severe PMS, you're experiencing cramps and bloating and fibroids, cysts, heavy bleeding, zinc actually helps it helps boost your testosterone production, but it also helps to block the conversion of testosterone into estrogen. And this is a problem when there's all of this imbalance that the body, for some reason, will steal away your testosterone and convert it into estrogen, which does nothing for your sex drive. It doesn't help your sex drive at all. So zinc is a really great one to take. And that's also true for men. Men can take, if you're with your partner and he happens to be male, you can give him rhodiola and you can give him zinc. Evening primrose oil. If you're interested in sex, but the response is a little bit dulled, and you're not feeling like you're achieving those big orgasms like you did before, evening primrose oil will help balance out your estrogen and progesterone. It will increase dopamine, and actually this is the key. This is why it helps boost the orgasmic potential that you have. It actually helps your body produce more nitric oxide. That is rare. This is one of the things that female Viagra tries to do, right? It's like, oh, let's just give you synthetic nitric oxide. But really, if you're taking evening primrose oil, your body will then naturally have a building block to help you make more of it on your own and in an integrated way that works for your whole system. So it's a great one. There are certain times you can't use it, like if you're pregnant or breastfeeding, but if you're not in that situation, you can certainly use it. And then another supplement that I think is really great is magnesium. Magnesium deficiency. If you ever wake up in the middle of the night with a leg cramp, you're magnesium deficient. But if you have poor sleep, fatigue, PMS, bloating, restless leg syndrome, you're magnesium deficient. You can even have them checked at your doctor's office. Magnesium, taking it can help because it makes it harder for testosterone to bind to proteins and allows for more of it to remain free. And you want more free testosterone, unbound testosterone floating around in your bloodstream to increase your interest in sex, right? So I'm giving you supplements that both help with interest, desire, and actual response, physical response. So that's really, really great. Magnesium also boosts your mood, and anytime you're happier, you're going to be more interested in enjoying your life, pleasure, etc. That is really one of the best. And of course, like I said, what's good for the goose is good for the gander. So if you're in a heterosexual relationship, your man can take all these supplements right along with you, and everybody can start to be more in sync sexually with each other. Now, I want to just talk about 2 food items that you should absolutely take out of your diet if you're having sexual problems in terms of desire and response. The first is for women. It's canola oil. Any of these processed synthetic fats that are full of omega-6s are going to crowd out your body's ability to absorb omega-3 fatty acids, and that's really bad for your sex drive. So whenever you increase omega-3 fatty acids, which we have in our Harmonized product, it absolutely increases both interest in sex and physical response. So better orgasms come from having adequate levels of omega-3 fatty acids. So watch those processed oils, ladies. Now for men, the thing to really weed out of the diet is soy products. Any kind of soy product full of phytoestrogens, and it absolutely dampens male sex drive. So, not good. So if that's going on, I would say you want to think about, getting rid of that.